Hey guys, welcome to Make Money Count. We're here with a slightly new configuration. I don't know if you can tell, but we did move around the studio a bit.
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's good. I like it.
We used to have it, if you remember when we first did it, we used to have it so that it was like in the
it was
corner.
like right here. Yeah. Back in the day. When we were a lot more grainy at that point, yeah.
We had different cameras.
Yeah, different cameras, yes. We're excited to bring you some more informative information about the market. Marcus is going to talk about some interesting stuff, of course. And then I thought it would be interesting to find out what a mortgage costs all around the world, which I thought was cool idea.
So we'll start off with talking about the economy.
Oh, yeah.
I hold the pen when I talk about the economy. Bank of Canada announcement coming up in not so many days, beginning of June. The probability that the Bank of Canada is going to drop interest rates continues to fall. Seedor's chart, Austin, if you want to pull it up for me right now, is showing like 35% chance. Now, if you remember, we've been saying it's not going to happen in June. It seems as though the rest of the market is starting to think that it's not going to happen in June. It will probably happen in July. Everything that we're seeing is going to encourage the Bank of Canada to drop interest rates. If anyone's following the real estate market right now, it is a bloodbath in the condo market. The amount of inventory that's coming online in the condo market right now is huge, huge. And the number of condos being sold is like way below anything we've seen in like the last 20 years. So those two variables, when you put them into a kind of supply demand equation for how the value of a condo, a per square foot of a condo should behave, there's definitely downward pressure on condo prices.
I saw like an ad on Instagram the other day. Own a condo today. It was a development on the Queensway. I can't remember. And it was like $3,500 down in like the first 2 years or something like that. And then like 1 year mortgage free, something like that. Like it's desperate. It's desperate.
Yeah. Well, so like builders don't see a path to bringing projects online. So condos aren't coming online right now. So developers are sitting on whatever projects they have. And the longer they sit on land and development sites, the carrying cost of those development sites just adds to the cost of them. And the price of a buildable square foot right now in Toronto is nothing. Like it's, maybe $50, whereas a couple years ago it was $250. If you think about a square foot of a condominium as a product, right? Imagine you live in a 1,000 square foot condo in the downtown core. In order to make that price of that condo, you require different inputs, right? You need land, you need labor, you need construction material, and then you need time and money. Okay. So those are the 5 variables. Okay. Mm-hmm. What's happened is we've seen, first of all, interest rates jump through the roof. And as a result, the cost to bring a project from raw land to a condominium has increased because of the cost of carrying the debt. The time to get your approvals hasn't changed. It's really difficult to get approvals in the city of Toronto. And that time adds to the cost. Labor costs have increased because of inflation. Material costs have increased because of inflation. Productivity, as we know and we talk about all the time, continues to go down. So when all of these input pieces of a buildable square foot start getting bigger, and on the demand side, there's no one there to buy them, the first thing that gets squeezed is the land. Right? And we talked about this last week. I was like, don't you remember everyone always used to just say like, well, buy land. They're not making any more of it. And now it just seems like, they're totally making more of it. I think that if we look back on this time, I mean, maybe not in 6 months, but in 2-3 years, this will prove to be the absolute best time to have bought land in the city of Toronto.
Right.
Like you can buy land right now for, $50 a buildable square foot. And it used to go for $250 a buildable square foot. And I'm not saying it's going to go back to being $250 a buildable square foot tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I am saying it's going to go back.
Right.
And eventually the demand for housing will shore up. Like the fastest growing country in the G7. I mean, we got a lot of people coming in. So I guess it's just to say, like, I understand what people are going through right now. You've got a condo and there's no bid on that condo. And there's so much supply of condominiums, right? There's so many tens of thousands of units that we're going to need to get absorbed before we can start scratching the surface on creating more housing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real barrier. But demand will come back into the market and that will create more stability. But right now, the condo market's dead. And the thing that you worry about is like, is that going to spread into the single family market? Is that going to seep into other areas of real estate? I read an article the other day that said, you know, the former darlings of the real estate market were storage and industrial.
Mm-hmm.
And now even storage and industrial are showing weakening.
Right.
You keep interest rates really high for a really long period of time. You start squeezing the consumer so much and money starts just being sopped up and absorbed into interest and servicing payments that the economy is going to grind to a halt. And that's what we're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the central bank continues to look at lagging indicators instead of leading indicators that will clearly show that we're in a total contractionary period right now.
Mm-hmm.
We need to drop interest rates. We should have dropped it. We should be dropping interest rates in June. We're not going to drop interest rates in June, but I think by the time July rolls around, it'll drop. And the other thing you got to think about is when they start dropping, they can really start dropping. Like you remember when COVID happened?
Yeah.
It was like, okay, we're dropping by 50. We're dropping by another 50. We're dropping by like it just the rates just peeled off. So hopefully we see some of that.
Same.
Yeah, but again, if you remember another thing I always say is like you want to be George Clooney on the spaceship. Yeah, like you want to just like be managing the economy with like a little tiny button that lets out tiny little space farts to move your spaceship to where it needs to go. You don't want to be like, you know, gunning it in one direction, which is what we're doing, right? We like screeched to a halt by slamming on the brakes and dropping interest rates as fast and as furiously as we could. And then we like hammered on the gas. I should be the opposite analogy, right? Because we basically slammed on the brakes by stopping the economy and slammed on the gas by dropping interest rates and trying to speed up the economy. Anyways, you get the point, right? You don't want to be overcorrecting, oversteering constantly. It's not healthy for the economy.
Yeah, collect it.
Yeah, that's what we're in right now. That being said, the other thing I want to talk about today, before we go into, I love what you prepared.
I mean, I didn't prepare too much.
I was hoping that there'd be preparation.
I mean, there is preparation. I did some research. I found out what mortgage rates are in Ukraine and Libya. So, I mean, that's pretty freaking good, I think.
Listen, I was expecting like real preparation. Do you have like infographics and things?
No infographics.
I don't know whether I use the pen for this. I want to talk about the bank earnings.
Okay.
Bank earnings. Economic or informative?
I think you keep the pen.
I'm dropping it just because you told me to keep it. No one tells me what to do. Okay, so the Canadian banks have announced or have started to announce their earnings with the exception of, I think Royal Bank and CIBC have not announced them as of the time of filming. We try to film this podcast Wednesdays at like 10 o'clock in the morning. So as of this morning, we got kind of a few more banks give us their numbers. And I want to share them with you. So first of all, did you know that the Canadian banks almost always earn a cumulative total of $10 billion in profits every quarter?
That's crazy.
Yeah, every quarter. Profit. And the largest contributor to their profit is something called net interest margins.
Who gets all that money?
Shareholders.
Right.
People that buy the stock.
Right.
Yeah. They, actually, Justin, they're doing this new thing now where they're going to use the profits to just reduce the interest rates on everybody's debt.
I mean, that would be...
it would be a fairy tale.
Yeah.
So some notable numbers that have come out. So number one, people should know, like the Canadian banks make a lot of money. I remember we did this one time for a presentation a while ago. And at the time they made $1,000 of profit every single year for every man, woman, and child in Canada. Isn't that amazing?
That's crazy.
$1,000 in profit for everybody. Pretty cool. And then their contribution margins are typically like kind of 20%. So you expect like, that means like the profit is the revenue of the banks is probably close to $200 billion. They
Crazy.
make over $200 billion worth of revenue every single year. It's amazing. Anyways, so Canadian banks have made a whole bunch of profit. All of them are making a little bit less profit right now because they're all adding provisions for loan losses into their numbers. And that ranges, but for like TD, Bank of Nova Scotia, and Bank of Montreal, they're about $1 billion. $1 billion for TD, $1 billion for Scotia, $700 million for Bank of Montreal. These are big loan loss provisions that they're adding on to their financial statements because they see that the borrower is strained. On the other side of that, though, we are seeing, and this I got from First National's quarterly report. First National had their mortgage origination drop by 20%, and they're citing competition in the market from two of the big banks. TD and Scotia are actively trying to increase their mortgage books, which is really smart, right? Like now is the time, real estate prices are down. They're kind of floating sideways. We may see a further correction, but probably not much. And it's time to get into a market right now, right? It's a good time to be lending money because we don't see real estate prices coming down too much. We do see them going up. Safer time to start lending money. So, and they're expanding their loan books. Also, they expand their books and they start lending money out now. Interest rates drop. Their net interest margins continue to torque higher. They make more money.
Right.
So smart on them, right? Good way to make money. So I thought that was really interesting. The net interest margins of the Canadian banks are not suffering. So that means that they are making more and more money on the difference between what they pay you on your deposits and what they charge you on your loans, right? That's it. It's a very simple equation. That's what makes a really good bank. Add on to that investment banking and mergers and acquisitions, which is totally dead right now. There's really nothing happening in that market. So like their kind of capital markets business is probably slowed down significantly. Hopefully with interest rates coming down, that will add to those profit numbers at the banks. I know everyone at home is probably like, oh my God, the banks almost don't, like there's a chance that they won't make it to $10 billion in profits this quarter.
It's very sad.
Yeah. I mean, geez, what are they going to do?
I don't know.
You may see some of the profit hungry bankers out at night with their fangs out looking to suck the blood of small women and children in order to make up for what is required on their bottom line.
I have a question actually. Since you were just looking at the banking numbers, should I have sold my TD stock yesterday?
Oh, I did. So TD, interesting. Do you know what's going on with TD with the anti-money laundering stuff?
Well, I know that because I've lost money on their stocks.
So
like a little bit.
TD is in a bit of a
lot of I feel.
No, it's like, but like they're kind of coming to grips with reality. So TD is being targeted by the Department of Justice, which is rare for a financial institution. But the Americans don't fool around when it comes to laundering proceeds of crime. And it was found that the kind of controls within TD Bank to prevent money laundering weren't up to the standards that they should have been to be operating as one of the largest banks in the American economy, right? And they're held to a certain level. The difference between what happens if you're a bank in Canada and you're a bank in the United States, in Canada, we have 5 banks, right? And our banks are governed, I don't want to say they're governed by themselves, but they are kind of, the governance occurs behind the scenes,
Right.
right? Like it's more of a kind of agreement, like, hey, we don't want you doing that. You're going to need to correct it. They don't want to expose that to too many people in the marketplace. They don't want to shake the confidence of the Canadian banks and the Canadian consumer in the Canadian banks. It's almost like this kind of backroom gentlemanly agreement that like the banks aren't going to run afoul of the system and the government's going to support them and the regulators will support them in doing so. In the United States, it's different, right? Like there are the Department of Justice, if they find out you are fooling around, they will splash it all across the front page of the news and they will come after you. Like some of the articles that I was reading about the TD Bank fiasco in the United States was like, TD Bank responsible for getting fentanyl on the streets.
That's so American.
Right? So TD Bank is kind of slowly coming to the realization that their aspirations of further expanding their bank in the United States will be severely limited for the next, I don't know, 5 years, maybe decade.
Until people forget about it a bit.
Or they hire some former congressmen and get more entrenched in the old boys club. But really, like, they're going after them hard right now. And what we saw on this most recent quarterly report, TD Bank took a $500 million write-down. So in addition to the $1 billion loan loss provision, they also took another $500 million write-down to allocate to what they believe are fines coming.
Right.
For all intents and purposes, from what I can glean from the situation, we're talking about like $2 to $4 billion
in fines.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. And what the real cost, the market doesn't like uncertainty. Stock market doesn't like uncertainty.
Yeah.
So TD Bank will continue to do poorly until there is certainty around what the penalty and what the fine is and what the limitations on their future growth are. Because if you remember, they were about to buy First Republic. Like TD was in the midst of buying a bank in the United States, and they got stopped in their tracks. And the only reason why we found out about the problems at TD Bank was because First Republic, who was selling to TD Bank, had to report it to their shareholders. And they said, we're in the middle of an acquisition, but the party that is acquiring us is under some regulatory scrutiny and it may limit our ability to sell. And then TD had to come out with what was going on. And I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. For sure, it's going to be a bigger fine than the 400 or 500 million that they put on their balance on their quarterlies. And if it should give you some comfort to know that FinTrack, which is this kind of institution that tracks the money laundering here in Canada, also fined TD Bank.
Interesting.
$8 million.
Oh, yeah. Drop in the bucket.
Anyway, so like TD Bank, what should you sell it? I don't know. Like
I already sold it.
Oh, okay. So why are you asking?
No, I just said, should I have waited?
Oh, no. I think you think you can rebuy that soon.
Right.
When like the news is like TD Bank unable to make an acquisition for 5 years in the U.S. market, will be under scrutiny and has been fined $3.7 billion, hit buy on TD Bank. Hit buy.
Yeah.
But I thought you'd find that interesting. Anyways, without any further ado.
How much does your mortgage cost all over the world? I think that was a good intro. I think that was solid. So Austin's going to pull up some information about what mortgages are going to cost all over the world. And we could just talk about it a little bit. I'm curious to know from Marcus what these numbers mean, right? Like, and the reason that I went down.
You don't know what they mean?
No, I know what they mean, but why are they where they are? Because I saw this Instagram reel and it was like, you think Canadian mortgages are expensive? Just go like travel around the world or go to Europe or whatever the case may be is. And so I was curious because of course, sometimes I do believe everything on the internet. So I was like, no, you know what? I'm going to look into this. And I found out some information and I spent all morning Googling best rates from all these countries to make sure that we were pretty on point with the numbers. And so first off, the top of the list here, interest rates in Argentina right now, if you want to get a mortgage, is 56.58%.
Are 56.58%.
Is that what I say?
Said is.
Oh, they are 56.58%. And why is that? Like that seems tremendous.
So listen, Argentina has kind of consistently had issues with inflation.
Right.
They have a really kind of they have a really bad kind of corruption spending problem in the country.
Right.
They've just hired a new leader. His platform was very much kind of rallying against the old guard of the country. And do you remember like Christina Kirchner? They was like she was the former president of Argentina, and her husband was the president before her. Anyways, he has come into power and the goal is to kind of cut spending and bring inflation more in line. But again, like we're seeing it in Canada, right? Like on a micro scale of this. But like when you fight inflation, the economy needs to feel pain.
Right.
And
I mean, that's a lot of pain.
Yeah. And well, that's when inflation runs away and it's hard to control. There's the result, right? Borrowing costs of 56%. So, I mean, it's just paralyzing for an economy. Turkey, who's number 2 on your list, is even more interesting. So Turkey, their leader, Erdogan, leading up to the election, their most recent election, was kind of hiring and firing central bankers. So that's an example of a country where the government of the country, the leader of the country is controlling the central bank. Like
Right.
Trump is kind of proposing I read an article about this recently that there are people within Trump's administration and future administration that are tabling the idea of what it would look like if the president of the United States could exert more control over the Federal Reserve.
Right.
Well, you saw that happen in Turkey, and that's how it played out, right? So when the central bankers were increasing interest rates and it was stifling the Turkish economy, Erdogan came in and got rid of them. Now that he's won the election, he's installed somebody. I think it's a she, and she's a former Goldman Sachs banker. She's come in now. So now you see Turkey raising interest rates. You'll see that mortgage rate come down, I believe. So you have to think what's happening in the background to all the real estate prices of these countries right now, right?
Right.
You got these like massively high rates. Imagine in Canada, we've got a glut of condos that we're sitting here stressed out, worried about.
Yeah.
And the prime rate's 7.2%. In Argentina, it's 57%.
I can't even grasp that. I was actually looking at condos in Buenos Aires, which is in Argentina,
And
not too long ago. And it's pretty, obviously it's pretty affordable. How are housing prices going to, get away from them? But
I think it probably just turns into like a cash market at that point, right? Or
Right, yeah.
Or like a black market of vendor take back financing in order to support a sale price.
right. Me and San Yun were looking for a 2-bedroom condo in Buenos Aires.
Which area? Recoleta is a nice area.
Is it?
Yeah.
And isn't that the cheese that melts and then they put it on the bread?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Raclette.
Raclette. Yeah.
See, I don't know any French, but I know what raclette is.
Buenos Aires is a really beautiful city, and it has all of these different neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Like there's one called Palermo, which is like the kind of, when I went there, it was like the up and coming trendy area. It was like Francis Ford Coppola had a hotel there. Willem Dafoe has a place there. Anyways,
Interesting. I think that's going to be my next trip.
way further away than you think it is.
14-hour flight.
Yeah,
15-hour flight. It's crazy. It's really far. Interestingly enough, it's also opposite seasons there. So when it's winter here, it's summer there. So anyways.
Great place to go in the wintertime.
Yeah.
So hot.
Yeah.
So hot. And like, you know what the best thing to eat there is, right? Steaks.
Really? Why?
Well, it's just like Argentinian beef, right?
Oh, right.
So I remember going there. My wife and I would go into like we'd be walking around and like we'd walk into a steakhouse for lunch. Soaked, I would be sweating.
Yeah, of course.
And Cordelia doesn't sweat. I sweat a lot. And the air conditioning would be cranked. You'd walk in, you'd sit down, you'd have the most glorious Caesar salad, super garlicky and anchovy-y, a great ribeye, Chicago style, like
Nice
just
and charry.
and you know, like I have a real problem at a restaurant, right? Like there's certain things that I have to do. Like for instance, if it's Justin's Steakhouse, anything on the menu that's like, if it says like Justin's Caesar salad or Justin's onion rings, I got to order it.
Yeah.
Because I know you're proud of it.
Yeah.
So I'll over order every time. And then I still have this like Sicilian peasant mentality instilled in me from my mother that like, if you order food and it's on the table, you should finish it. I think I order like a Russian. Like Russians will just, I order everything on menu.
Okay.
I eat what I want. I don't eat what I don't want.
Okay.
And then when it comes to the table, I have the Sicilian immigrant mentality of, Ma, what are you going to leave on the table? Which
You really got the hang going there.
which led to me being 265 pounds, right?
Right.
Anyway, so I think Argentina, I was like peak fatso Marcus.
Yeah.
We're rolling into these steakhouses. We show up, I order everything on the menu. Cordelia like nibbles away at a like petit filet. I take down the 26-ounce bone-in ribeye with
Why
all
not?
of the accoutrement.
Why not?
I'm freezing inside. I'm so comfortable. I've finished a bottle of wine. We walk outside and you get hit in the face by 45-degree heat. And you're like, oh my God.
I'm excited about this.
That's going to
Not
happen.
about the
when you-
45 degrees.
That's going to happen when you go there.
I am excited about this. And with the price of a mortgage there, I mean, steaks can't be that expensive right now.
So what, look, okay. So another thing that would happen in an economy like that
Yeah.
is nothing would come in,
Right.
right? So their money would be so devalued. Think about it, right? Their money would be so devalued that they wouldn't be able to purchase things from outside. So you'll be enjoying the things that are native to that country.
Right.
But it creates almost a natural barrier around that country for preventing that country from bringing things in.
Right. Going back to the list, I mean, we've got all the, like, you know, I mean, some of these you would kind of expect. We've got Venezuela, Iran, Uzbekistan. I don't know, you know, who's getting a mortgage in Uzbekistan, Nigeria. But my question is, I feel like personally in a war-torn country like Ukraine, I feel like they would be a bit higher on the list. No? Like, how do you feel about that?
I mean, that's a good question. Like, who's lending money in Ukraine? You thought that inflation would be higher in the Ukraine than it is. I don't know that there's necessarily like runaway inflation in that country. I think that, you know how we measure like our CPI? So like CPI is like a basket of goods. And within that basket, we spoke about this, I think 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Within that basket, when the Bank of Canada looks at CPI, they look at like trim CPI or core CPI, and they exclude a bunch of the goods in it that are behaving erratically because of outside and like one-time circumstances or inputs like weather or a strike or a war.
Yep.
So perhaps in Ukraine, what's happening, and I don't know, like I'm literally looking at this now for the first time with you, but perhaps in the Ukraine, what's happening is that basket of goods, everything on it is, not everything, but the majority of those goods are being impacted by the war and inflating the price of it. So like you could probably understand that like fuel's probably pretty expensive for them. Like anything, again, similar to the situation in these kind of hyperinflation countries, anything that's coming from outside of the country would have an impact, like it would be impacted and it would be more expensive than it is normally, therefore creating that inflationary environment and where goods are increasing. So should it be higher is the question. The problem is there's probably very little kind of growth and outside investment happening.
Yeah.
And it's really just kind of predicated upon how expensive the goods are within that. So that probably sets a kind of limit on the top end of it. But I couldn't be certain.
Yeah. Like this probably seems, I don't know. Like, I don't know what day-to-day life is in the Ukraine right now, but I feel like the number one priority would not be, you know, purchasing your first home or whatever, right?
Right, but like things still have to transact, right? The people have a house, they need to refinance.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I mean, listen, if you have any questions, drop us a comment and we can, I mean, Marcus is obviously a youth of information, even on the Turkish central bank. So if you have any questions, we can get back to you, no problem. And I think that's it for this week.
I thought you had another slide that was like how old people are when they pay off their or when they get a mortgage.
No. I was mentioning that in my research of interest rates all around the world. So I spent all last night Googling best mortgage rates in Iran, which is like, you know what I mean? So just to give you a comparison, the average age of a first-time homebuyer in Ontario is 36 years old, which seems decent. I feel like it's gone up, obviously. I feel like it was, you know, people were buying houses a lot younger back in the day. But the average first-time home buyer's age in Switzerland is 48, which is insane. I feel like that's quite crazy. What's even more interesting, so as part of that stat that I was looking at for Switzerland, 48 years old, you need to have approximately, I think it was 91,000 euros saved in order to purchase a property. That's like the average first-time home buyer's down payment. So I don't know what the rules are around like insured mortgages or high ratio mortgages there, but that would be interesting to look up as well. Mortgages I find are interesting all over the world. And whenever I go to a country, I like to kind of look into like, you know, what it's like to get a mortgage there.
You do, eh?
Yeah. In Iceland, there's a different kind of variable rate, which is tied directly to inflation as opposed to like whatever their version of the prime rate is. So there's like a fixed, and then there's an inflationary tied mortgage, which is interesting. And they eat rotten shark there, so who knows? All right. Well, I mean, I think that was very fun. That was a good topic.
That was fun. Yeah.
That was fun. I'm excited about next week. I will see you then. I will see you then. And until then, hit like, hit comment, hit subscribe, do all those fun things. Hit us up on Instagram. Leave us a comment about what you want to hear us talk about. And if you have any questions about mortgage rates in Kazakhstan, we're definitely the place to talk to.
Bye. Thanks for watching.